It's good enough. That's good enough. Don't worry about it. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Gopi Janavallabha Girivaradhari Shodanandana Bhajana Ranjana. Nelson, give that gentleman the sheet. Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Yamuna Tiravanachari Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Vishnupad Paramahamsa Paravatikacharya Ashtotar Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Paravatikacharya Ashtotar Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveta Bhaktabhinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 19th day of November, 2024 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are beginning chapter 15 on page 591, entitled The Yoga of the Supreme Person, chapter 15. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Urdvamulam adhakshakam ashvatam prahur avyayam chandangsi yasya parnani yastam veda savedavit. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Urdhmoolamadaksakam Ashvatham Prahuravyayam Chandangsi Yasya Parnani Yastam Veda Savedavit. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Urdhmoolamadaksakam Ashvatam Prahuravyayam Chandangsi Yasya Parnani Yastam Veda Savedavit. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Urdhmoolamadaksakam Ashvatam Prahuravyayam Chandangsi Yasya Parnani Yastam Veda Savedavit. Tapas. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Urdhmoolam Adakshakam Ashvatam Prahuravyayam Chandangsi Yasya Parnani Yastam Veda Savedavit. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Urdhmoolamadaksakam Ashvatam Prahuravyayam Chandangsi Yasya Parnani Yastam Veda Savedavit. Time out. Did you want to try it? Yeah, but just take the sheet off the floor. Just put it underneath the book. That's it. Go ahead. Go ahead, Prabhu. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Urdhmoolamadaksakam Ashvatam Prahuravyayam Chandangsi Yasya Parnani Yastam Veda Savedavit. Yeah. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Urdhmoolamadaksakam Ashvatam Prahuravyayam Chandangsi Yasya Parnani Yastam Veda Savedavit. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Urdhmoolamadaksakam Ashvatam Prahuravyayam Chandangsi Yasya Parnani Yastam Veda Savedavit. Urdhmoolamadaksakam Ashvatam Prahuravyayam Chandangsi Yasya Parnani Yastam Veda Savedavit. No? You want to try? You don't have to if you don't want to. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Urdhmoolamadaksakam Ashvatam Prahuravyayam Chandangsi Yasya Parnani Yastam Veda Savedavit. So I'm going to read the word by word meanings. And Tapas, you know how to turn this thing off? The heat? Okay. I know you can figure it out. Shri Bhagavan Vacha, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, said, Urdhva Moolam, with roots above, Adhak, downwards Shakam, branches. Ashwatam, a banyan tree. Prahu is said, Abhyayam, eternal. Chandangsi, the Vedic hymns. Yasya, of which, Parnani, the leaves. Yaha, anyone who. Tam, that, Veda knows. Saha, he, Vedavit, the knower of the Vedas. Did you do it? Because it takes some time to go off. Yeah. Okay, translation. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, it is said that there is an imperishable banyan tree that has its roots upward and its branches down, and whose leaves are the Vedic hymns. One who knows this tree is the knower of the Vedas. Purport. This chapter is called The Yoga of the Supreme Person. After the discussion of the importance of Bhakti Yoga, one may question, what about the Vedas? It is explained in this chapter that the purpose of Vedic study is to understand Krishna. Therefore, one who is in Krishna consciousness, who is engaged in devotional service, already knows the Vedas. The entanglement of this material world is compared here to a banyan tree. For one who is engaged in fruitive activities, there is no end to the banyan tree. He wanders from one branch to another, to another, to another. The tree of this material world has no end. And for one who is attached to this, tree, there is no possibility of liberation. There's a line missing in some of these books. The Vedic hymns, meant for elevating oneself, are called the leaves of this tree. This tree's roots grow upward because they begin from where Brahma is located, the topmost planet of this universe. If one can understand this indestructible tree of illusion, then one can get out of it. This process of extrication should be understood. In the previous chapters, it has been explained that there are many processes by which to get out of the material entanglement. And up through the 14th chapter, we have seen that devotional service to the Supreme Lord is the best way. Now, the basic principle of devotional service is detachment from material activities and attachment to the transcendental service of the Lord. The process of breaking attachment to the material world is discussed in the beginning of this chapter. The root of this material existence grows upward. This means that it begins from the total material substance, from the topmost planet of the universe. From there, the whole universe is expanded, with so many branches representing the various planetary systems. The fruits represent the results of the living entity's activities, namely religion, economic development, sense gratification, and liberation. Now, there is no ready experience in this world of a tree situated with its branches down and its roots upward, but there is such a thing. That tree can be found beside a reservoir of water. We can see that the trees on the bank reflect upon the water with their branches down and roots up. In other words, the tree of this material world is only a reflection of the real tree of the spiritual world. This reflection of the spiritual world is situated on desire, just as the tree's reflection is situated on water. Desire is the cause of things being situated in this reflected material light. One who wants to get out of this material existence must know this tree thoroughly through analytical study. Then he can cut off his relationship with it. This tree, being the reflection of the real tree, is an exact replica. Everything is there in the spiritual world. The impersonalists take Brahman to be the root of this material tree. And from the root, according to Sankhya philosophy, come Prakriti, Purusha, then the three gunas, then the 5 gross elements, Pancha Mahabhuta, then the 10 senses, Dashendriya, mind, etc. In this way, they divide up the whole material world into 24 elements. If Brahman is the center of all manifestations, then this material world is a manifestation of the center by 180 degrees, and the other 180 degrees constitute the spiritual world. The material world is the perverted reflection, so the spiritual world must have the same variegatedness, but in reality. Therefore, both Prakriti and Purusha must be there. In the spiritual world, however, Prakriti is the Supreme Lord's internal energy, and the Purusha is the Supreme Lord himself. That is explained in the Bhagavad Gita 8.22, Purusha Sapadak Partha. The different Difference, the difference, something. What does your book say? The difference? Material. There's something missing. I'm sorry, it's my fault, we screwed up. The difference is that the spiritual world is eternal and the material one, it is temporary. A reflection is temporary, for it is sometimes seen and sometimes not seen. But the origin from whence the reflection is reflected is eternal. The material reflection of the real tree has to be cut off. When it is said that a person knows the Vedas, it is assumed that he knows how to cut off attachment to this material world. If one knows that process, he actually knows the Vedas. One who is attracted by the ritualistic formulas of the Vedas is attracted by the beautiful green leaves of the tree. He does not exactly know the purpose of the Vedas. The purpose of the Vedas, as disclosed by the personality of God himself, is to cut down this reflected tree and attain the real tree of the spiritual world. Om Jnana Timandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble praises unto him and all members of Sri Parampara, the disciplic succession. So this is a famous analogy or metaphor that Krishna gives us to describe this material world. And Prabhupada's famous phrase, perverted reflection, distorted reflection. Now the significance of that is that we can learn a lot about the spiritual world. As Prabhupada says, you can learn a lot about God by contemplating yourself, because we have his qualities in minute degree. So just as we have attachments, we become attracted to the opposite sex, there's the perfection of that in the spiritual world. Krishna's relationship with his queens and the Dwarka portion of Goloka Vrindavan, and of course with the gopis, you see. But why is this reflection or this experience that we have said to be a perverted reflection? Well, the answer is, first of all, that it's temporary. It's temporary. As much as you may enjoy, say, eating a certain kind of food or whatever you do, we have all different kinds of things, of relationships we establish in this material world. But as we know, as you grow older in this world, these relationships come and go. And if you know, you may be married to your wife for 40 years and then you have your children and so forth, but at a certain point, there's separation. There's death. She dies, you die, he dies, like that. So that's the main difference, is that it's not, there's pleasure there, but then at a certain point it can become painful. It does become painful. What is that verse I always chant, the prayers of Prahlad? He describes the material world in 3 lines, and then the 4th line he gives a solution. Yasyat priya viyoga sayoga janma shokagnina sakalayonasya daihimana dukaushadam tadapi dukam atadhyaham bhuman brahmame vadameta vadasya yogam. So the last line he's directly addressing the Shringadev, asking him for the solution. So yasyat priya apriya viyoga sayoga. So this is what this material world is all about. Those of you may have heard me quote this verse before. I always thought it was very insightful and very illuminating. So yasmat means from this, what he's going to describe, priya apriya viyoga sanyoga, or priya apriya viyoga sayoga. That's how the first line goes. So what is priya? Priya means that which is dear to you, right? That which is dear to you. I like to give the most dear thing, really, is your healthy body, right? A nice body which is nice and healthy, and you can do all kinds of things. And there's multi-trillion-dollar, structure of medical insurance and hospitals and pharmacies and everything and all kinds, in order to preserve your health or regain your health, isn't it? That's the reason. So that means that inevitably in this world, young or old, but mostly older, something's going to go wrong with the bodily machine. And you hope that the doctor can fix it, you hope you can afford it, and so forth. So that's the nature of this world. Birth, old age, disease, and death. And disease is the big one. Death is no big deal. It's the disease that comes before it, and the experience of it, of course. But so that's one source of now. Shokagnina means the fire of lamentation, the fire of mental pain, physical pain. That's it. So that's caused by the things that are dear to you, and there's a whole list of things that we've attached to that we take shelter of, and eventually they're taken away, sooner or later. And those things which are abhorrent to you, which you don't want, are forced upon you by the force of time. Eventually things happen. You reap your karma, whatever it may be. So these two things, that's which is you highly value, is most dear to you, is been taken away from you quickly or slowly. And the things which you don't want are forced upon you eventually. Just imagine, you remember the COVID pandemic? I know a lot of it was trying to block it out, but it's there in memory. And it was just a whole different experience. I mean, everything looks the same, but there's these invisible entities called the virus, that you may be breathing out and I may be breathing in. Okay, let me put a mask. You see. Or you say, well, I don't believe in it. It's just, I'm not going to get the vaccine. But we've had several devotees die because of not getting the vaccine. So anyway, that's the material world. So now, and he says, Shokagna Sakala Yonishu Dayamana. In all kinds of species. The lower species, they have no idea what to do about it. They're just alive and they try to enjoy it and like that. But still, they're feeling terrified or, happy and like that. So, but in human form, we have the intelligence. We can figure out a remedy for the misery. We have different diseases. Okay, we'll work on medical research and we'll have like that. Or I give the example of the automobile, right? So that was the automobile business started. I think the early part of the last century. It really got going. And one of the big impetuses for it was that you had big cities growing up, like Chicago, and everything was by, the horse-drawn cart. People were getting around with the horses, But it was a big mess in the city. You can imagine, it's the horses, So then they invented the car, and gradually they were able to replace the horses with, and it was a big relief. So, okay, now we're 125 years later, and global warming. Burning the fossil fuels. That's an aushadhi that became a dukkha, right? Dukkha aushadha, tarapi dukkha. So what's the solution? So the last line, so dukkha aushadham tarapi dukkham atadhyaham. Atadhyaham is the origin of the whole problem. It means I'm thinking I'm something I'm not. I'm thinking I'm this body rather than spirit. You see? So what is the solution? He's got this little Prahlad, it was in the Shringadev, he said, Bhuman, oh great one, Brahmami, this soul who's wandering in all these species up in there. Vadameta Dasa Yoga, please teach me your Dasa Yoga, Bhakti Yoga. Please, instruct me. It's a wonderful verse. It can be chanted before every Bhagavad Gita class because Bhagavad's teaching us here. So this is the description of the material world is a reflection, because the things are there but in a distorted form, and they're very temporary. How if a reflection can be disrupted at any time, right? It's in a very clear pool of water, but some fish may come up, and suddenly it's distorted. So this is what we have. So how to and what is based on is desire. It's that material desire, which is nothing but spiritual desire that's been misdirected toward matter. This verse I quote all the time. Bhayam dvitiya benabeshitak ishara petatsa viparhiyo asmriti. This is how, because as soon as you detach yourself from Krishna, from the source of all safety and happiness and pleasure, then you're subjecting yourself to fear. Because there's so many things in this world, you're not expecting them, dangers of every kind, but when we turn away from the Lord and we get absorbed in this material world of dualities, dvitiya abhinaveshitak means absorbed in the dualities of this world. Ishara pesa viparhiyo asmriti. Everything becomes reversed. Instead of becoming a servant of the Lord, we try to become the master of this world. And we forget, asmriti, we forget all about our life in the spirit. We forget who we really are, everything. So this is a result of maya, tanmayata. So one has to be intelligent, Buddha. And what to do? Well, abhajetam, to worship that same Lord again, turn back toward Krishna. This is what this movement is all about. How to take one's attention away from this world and so many things and a million different things, and place it on Krishna. And the most efficacious way of doing that is chanting the holy name, especially in this age. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And how many times have we heard and read that the holy name itself is Krishna, that he has manifested his energies through that holy name. And the very word Krishna, there's a beautiful verse. Let's see if I can remember. Krishna bhuvachika sabdo nishchanirvata vachika tororaikyam param brahma Krishna ityabhidiyate. So the word Krishna is 2 syllables. So this is an analyzing the word. The syllable Krish embodies all the attractive qualities of Krishna. The origin of that root Krish is the same origin of the word karshati, which means to pull, right? And krishi gorakshavanijam, pulling that plow. Krishna, you see. So Krishna is all attractive, but we are competing with Krishna. So he allows us to forget him and to become attracted to various things in this material world. You see. And then the syllable na embodies all the ananda and the pleasure. You see. So the 2 syllables Krishna form the Param Brahma, the Supreme Brahman. Now the one for Rama is what? How does it go? Ramante yogino anante satyananda chadatmani iti Rama padenasu param brahma madiyate. Again, param brahma. Ramante yogino anante. The yogis, they enjoy endless happiness. None of material happiness is not endless. That's the problem. It's temporary. But you can enjoy endless happiness. Ramante yogino anante satyananda chidatmani. It is real happiness, real bliss. Because it's spiritual. It's the spirit contacting spirit, Chidavani. Iti Rama Parenasa. Thus the syllables Rama also embody the Supreme Brahman. And of course is an essential part of the Hare Krishna mantra, the word Rama too. So Krishna is so kind, he comes as Lord Chaitanya to teach this chanting. Now Lord Chaitanya didn't invent it. It's in the Upanishads. Very important verse. It begins, there's 2 verses here. The first one is, we can all chant together. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Iti Shodashikam Nam, Kali Kalmasha Nashanam, Natak Padataropaya Sava Vedeshu Drishyate. I don't know if that's the whole Upanishad or anyway, the essential 2 verses. So, these 16 names, Iti Shodashikam Nam, Kali Kalmasha Nashanam, for the destruction of the impurities and problems of Kali Yuga. Kalmasha Nashanam. Kali Kalmasha Nashanam, destroy. Natak Padataropaya Sarva Vedeshu Drishyate. If you search through all the Vedas, you won't find a more efficient, efficacious means than chanting and hearing this mantra. So Lord Chaitanya didn't invent it. This is a Vedic mantra, Hare Krishna, Hare Ram. Some say, but look, in the Vedas it says Hare Ram, Hare Krishna. So Prabhupada says, doesn't matter. Once you start going, just like Valmiki, the whole thing with Valmiki, he was a thief, right? And I don't know the story so much, but I know that he got the mercy. Was it Narada Muni who was teaching him? But was it? Usually he's what comes and teaches. So we said you have to chant the name Ram, 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 Ram. I said, no, I don't like to. Okay, look, you're a thief, you're a criminal. You just chant the word for death. Mara, 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 Mara. Before you long, he's chanting Ram, 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 Ram. And he chanted for a long time, like 60,000 years, right? Then he wrote the Ramayana. So he became fully realized. So that's how we can see the actual tree that's standing there, the spiritual world. Otherwise, we're absorbed in the reflection. And the reflection is very unsteady, and it's unfulfilling, because it's ultimately not full of substance. It's just a shadow, you know. So that's this wonderful analogy that he's going to give here. And now he's going to describe this tree, which is very entangling, even though it's a reflection. Okay. All right, I'll go on if there's no comments, questions. Adaschodvam prasvitastasya shakha guna pravidha vishaya pravalaha adashtamulanyunasantatani karmanabandhini manusya loke. The branches of this tree extend downward and upward, nourished by the three modes of material nature. The twigs are the objects of the senses. The tree also has roots going down. So the first description, roots up, branches down. But now it's saying branches up, roots down. It's a complicated tree. The tree also has roots growing down, and these are bound to the fruitive actions of human society. Purport. The description of the banyan tree is further explained here. Its branches spread in all directions. In the lower parts, there are variegated manifestations of living entities, human beings, animals, horses, cows, dogs, cats, etc. These are situated on the lower parts of the branches, whereas on the upper parts are higher forms of living entities, the demigods, Gandharvas, and many other higher species of life. As a tree is nourished by water, so this tree is nourished by the three modes of material nature. Sometimes we find that a tract of land is barren for want of sufficient water, and sometimes a tract is very green. Similarly, where particular modes of material nature are proportionately greater in quantity, the different species of life are manifested accordingly. The twigs of the tree are considered to be the sense objects. By development of the different modes of nature, we develop different senses, and by the senses we enjoy different varieties of sense objects. The tips of the branches are the senses, the ears, nose, eyes, etc., which are attached to the enjoyment of different sense objects. The twigs are sound, form, touch, and so on, the sense objects. The subsidiary roots are attachments and aversions, which are byproducts of different varieties of suffering and sense enjoyment. The tendencies toward piety and impiety are considered to develop from these secondary roots, which spread in all directions. The real root is from Brahmaloka, and the other roots are in the human planetary systems. After one enjoys the results of virtuous activities in the upper planetary systems, he comes down to this earth and renews his karma, or fruitive activities for promotion. This planet of human beings is considered the field of activities. So this is an extended metaphor of the banyan tree, as this whole encompassing this whole material world, even the higher planets, lower planets, and things like that. And the basic point that we need to remember is it's very complicated. Once you get entangled in this tree, you can keep going from branch to branch and species to species for forever until you get the mercy of the Lord or the Lord's representative. That's what it takes. It's like if you're entangled, you know, I do some people, we all have maybe, who are really entangled in drugs, drug addiction, you know. And there comes a point where the person needs an intervention. The drug just has hold. I grew up in New York City, and at that time, the 50s and 60s, I'm real old, the 50s and 60s, practically all the heroin addicts were in New York. If they got into it in Milwaukee, they traveled to New York, you know, because there it was more available and whatever, you know, you can hang out with, you know. So once you get that, and there used to be this phrase, which is very instructive. They had a monkey on their back. If you're addicted, it means that you can't get rid of it. You're impelled, you know, by this monkey to go. You know, very kind of scary, you know. So I never knew people that intimately, you know. But when I lived on the Lower East Side, you would see people like that. You're sitting on the sidewalk, you know. It's very tragic. But it just takes hold of you. In other words, you're not free to. You need to be taken from that environment and put into a place where you can't get it and you have support. Just like you probably don't know this, and the only reason I know it because it's kind of a long story. But you know what AA is, and Alcoholics Anonymous, right? So there's I might as well tell you what, I won't tell any names. I used to travel to Alatra all the time. I have a friend there, and twice a year I would go and spend a couple of weeks in, kirtans, classes, things like that. And there's one very nice devotee there named Adikarta. Adikarta is the old Prabhupada disciple. I think he's originally from England. And he had a farm. It's farmland. He had farm, he had some cows, but his real passion was book distribution. Even though he had a farm, he had some sons, older sons who would take care of the farm when I was there. And eventually, I came acquainted with one of the boys who had a problem. He grew up in the Gurukul. He went to the Gurukul in Mayapur, and he told me, the boy told me what happened. That one day he was in this, I don't know how many of you have been to Mayapur, but the main temple they had for many years. Now, of course, the TOV is taking over. This was before TOVP. But they had a nice temple, and they had eventually installed these big Panchatattva deities, very, very magnificent deities there. So he was in this very established Gurukul. But Mayapur is a sacred place, and especially with all the Hare Krishna buildings and everything. So they would have all kinds of visitors, and sometimes you would find a real yogi, who would come there. He'd have a staff, and he had a long beard and everything. And he was a meditative yogi, but he was attracted to Shiva and Krishna worship, so he came by. So he was a young kid. He's in the Gurukul, playful, 7 years old or something, So he went up to this yogi and he pulled his danda, and he ran away. So he looked at him, like, oh, yeah. And then he did it again, So then he got angry at him and he cursed him, So he didn't feel anything right away. But eventually he had an alcohol problem. I don't know where he got it or something, but he got into becoming an alcoholic. So Adikarta and I were friends, so he said, I'm going to send him over here, to your temple here, and so he can get your association and this and that, like that. So he was spending time here. I think he had rented a place. So what happened was that he found his way up to this AA, up the street. It's in a church. There's several big churches up there. I go for a walk on the Cass if you go walk up there. One of them was founded in 1947. It's a long time ago. So 77 years. So as old as I am. So anyway, then he made friends with somebody and tracked him down here. This fellow wasn't an alcoholic, but he was a cocaine addict. I had been, and he was working to get rid of it. So anyway, they invited me to come up and speak. And I went up there, and usually when you speak, you stand up and say, "My name is Dravida Das, and I'm an alcoholic." But you see, I've been clean for so many months, and you have a badge, you have a badge. So I couldn't say that, I used to drink a little beer when I was 18, so that's like 50 years ago, but that doesn't work. But the interesting is, I think I have a book that they gave me. There's so many things that are similar. First of all, they believe in a higher power. They don't want to be sectarian, so it's not Christian or anything, but it's a higher. I need to invoke the higher power. And the association of those who are cleaner, who have been clean for 6 months, and you've only been clean for 1 month, like that. So, but it's the idea of that in that association you can get the spiritual strength or the mental strength, whatever you call it, in order to stay away from it and get some momentum in being free from the alcohol. But what what is that? It's kind of a metaphor for sense gratification. Because even if you're not addicted to these drugs, which take over your body, in the senses, but you can be addicted to anything, certain kind of movies or this or that. The whole thing of what is it? Codependency. I got to be with that person, and if they leave me, oh God, you collapse. You become dysfunctional. So it's all addiction. All of our problem in this world is that we have forgotten Krishna in our attempt to enjoy and imitate him. And now we're stuck in the syndrome because we have no idea of any way out, and we don't even recognize the problem. at first. If we're not really in trouble, we're just going through life, trying to enjoy here and there like that, until something really bad happens. So this analogy is actually very telling. It's very illuminating, and we have to cut down this tree, and that comes in the next verse. And this next verse is really important because this is how to surrender. This is the next verse. Nirmana moha jita sanga dosha. Did I skip a verse? No. Oh, I did. I skipped 2 verses. 3 and 4. Okay, I'm sorry. Na rupamasyeha tatopalabhyate nanto nachadir natasampratishta ashvatamenam suvarudhamulam asanga shastrena dudhena chitva tatak padang tat pademagitavyam yasmin katana navartanti bhuyaha tameva chadyam purusham papadye yatak pravitti pasata purani. The real form of this tree cannot be perceived in this world. No one can understand where it ends, where it begins, or where its foundation is. But with determination, one must cut down this strongly rooted tree with the weapon of detachment. Notice the asanga shastrena. You see that in the 4th line of the first word there. The weapon of detachment. Thereafter, one must seek that place from which, having gone, one never returns, and there surrender to that Supreme Personality of Godhead, from whom everything began and from whom everything has extended since time immemorial. Purport. It is now clearly stated that the real form of this banyan tree cannot be understood in this material world. Since the root is upwards, the extension of the real tree is at the other end. When entangled with the material expansions of the tree, one cannot see how far the tree extends, nor can one see the beginning of this tree. Yet one has to find out the cause. Quote, I am the son of my father is the son of such and such a person, etc. By searching in this way, one comes to Brahma, who is generated by the Garbhodakshaya Vishnu. Finally, in this way, when one reaches the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that is the end of research work. One has to search out that origin of this tree, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, through the association of persons who are in knowledge of that Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then, by understanding, one becomes gradually detached from this false reflection of the reality. And by knowledge, one can cut off the connection and actually become situated in the real tree. The word asanga is very important in this connection, because the attachment for sense enjoyment and lording it over the material nature is very strong. Therefore, one must learn detachment by discussion of spiritual science based on authoritative scriptures, and one must hear from persons who are actually in knowledge. As a result of such discussion in the association of devotees, one comes to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then the first thing one must do is surrender to Him. The description of that place whence, having gone, one never returns to this false reflected tree is given here. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is the original root from whom everything has emanated. To gain the favor of that Personality of Godhead, one has only to surrender, and this is a result of performing devotional service by hearing, chanting, etc. He is the cause of the extension of the material world. This has already been explained by the Lord Himself. Aham sarvasya prabhava. This is 10th chapter, 8th verse, first line of the first verse of the essential 4 verses. I am the origin of everything. Therefore, to get out of the entanglement of this strong banyan tree of material life, one must surrender to Krishna. As soon as one surrenders unto Krishna, one becomes detached automatically from this material extension. So, in this 2nd chapter of the 1st canto, we find echoes of this purport and this whole process here. This, okay, so was that 3 and 4 that I read? Yes. Okay. So, asanga shastrena. It's a weapon of detachment. Now, in the first canto, 2nd chapter, there's a word describing how one can cut the knots in the heart. Another way of visualizing it, another metaphor, is that when we turn away from Krishna, we become attached to various things in this world. And these attachments keep us bound here. And they're likened to knots or ropes that are tied from our heart, from your consciousness. So how do you cut them? So there's a verse, Yadanudyasina yukta karma granti nabandhanam chindandi kovidastatsa kona koya kataratim. So Anudyasina is the sword of remembrance, the sword of remembrance of Krishna. Previously to this verse, there's a series of them. It begins as an answer to the question of the sages at Naimisharanya. This is where the Bhagavatam was being spoken for the second time by Sutta Goswami, who was in the original conclave and heard from Shukadev. Now he's related it to the sages in Naimisharanya. So they asked him, what's that supreme dharma by which the soul can attain to unlimited and unending happiness? You see? So he begins with this Savai Pungsang Paro Dharma Yato Bhakti Radhokshide, that supreme dharma is that which develops loving devotion to Adhokshaja. Who can tell me what that word Adhokshaja means? It's a name for Krishna. Go ahead.
Master of senses. Master of the senses.
No. Adha Akshaja. Akshaja means that which is born from the senses, from the eyes and the other senses, that knowledge, in other words, material knowledge. Krishna pushes it down. It's just a description of the transcendental Lord, who's beyond the reach of our material mind and senses. That's the definition of transcendent. So, if you're going to develop devotion for that Lord, you have to have faith, because you can't perceive Him directly, you see? And that's where the Guru comes in, you see? Someone who is already at that point and can testify to the reality, and you can see in that person, and gives you a means by which you can begin to perceive, and especially through sound. Now, this doesn't directly talk about the holy name here, or it does later in the Bhagavatam. But the whole idea is that you're hearing from the authorized, realized source about the personality of Godhead. And it's very attractive. That's why the third verse of the Bhagavatam, we can all chant together. It's a very well-known verse. Nagamakal patado galitam palam. Shukamukaramita dravasamyutam. Bebata bhagavatam rasamalayam mohodaho rasika bhuvibhavuka. First two verses are very serious. This whole subject in the first verse, Dharma project the kaitavo, and the next verse, we're kicking out all cheating Dharma, But the third verse, hey, this Bhagavatam is full of nectar. Drink it, O wise souls, and don't stop. Keep drinking it, So by that drinking through the ears, one can become advanced in devotional service. That's the most important process. Beginning Shravanam, and of course Kirtanam, and Vishnu Smaranam, hearing, chanting, and remembering. And the other processes follow naturally. So then it goes on. So the supreme goal, supreme dharma is bhakti. So parodharma yato bhakti hokshate ahoitiki pratiyata. But that bhakti has to be free of material desire. Not that you're worshiping the Lord as an order supplier, So ahoitiki, without material motive. And unceasing, apratiyata. So it's a high bar. But yayatma supersediti, that will fully satisfy the soul. Now the next verse is pertinent to our subject here. How to become detached, how to break these bonds and these attachments. So he says, Vasudeva, that's Krishna, Bhagavati, the Supreme Lord, Bhakti Yoga Prayojita. By engaging in Bhakti Yoga for Vasudeva or Krishna, what's the first benefit? Janayati, the same as English word, generates. Janayati, janayat yashu, quickly, vairagyam. That's what we want. Vairagya means detachment, you see. Janayat yashu and jnanam. Jnanam chayadahoitin. Jnana and vairagya go together. Jnana itself can produce vairagya. How many times have I brought this up, how I was there when they first put the little notice on the cigarette packs? No, this warning, cigarette smoking can be hazardous to your health. Now it says, is hazardous to your health. The big campaign had to do. So So the idea is that, oh, the kids will see that, and they say, oh, I don't want to hurt my, so they won't get hooked, Problem is that if their friends are smoking and their movie stars are smoking, which everyone was in the 50s, 60s, it's very, very difficult. But real knowledge produces vairagya. And by getting attracted to Krishna, you want to know more and more about him. So that's the idea. And once that vairagya is building, that means that the knots are covering. The end. So in the course of all this, he finally comes to the point of one has to hear. Well, how do you hear? You have to be attracted. How do you develop an attraction for hearing about Krishna? And then you develop yananudyasina, the sword of remembrance. By that remembrance, when you're hearing and when you're remembering what you heard, that's all it's sort of, and you cut those attachments in the heart. And any devotee who seriously is chanting Hare Krishna and practicing devotional service can experience that. It's so liberating because you realize, oh, I was doing all these things that really wasn't good for me and it was just keeping me bound to this world. And now I'm spending so much time, reading about it and meeting with devotees, chanting the deities, all the festivals, prasadam. There's always something, if you want to, that you can be attracted to, like Krishna. It's all attractive. So that's the way. And the next verse, we don't have time to finish it, but we'll do it tomorrow. Nirmanamo jita sangha dosha, that you can conquer over all of the faults that have developed by bad association over many lifetimes. That's what this first line says. Nirmana moha, and you become free from mana, false pride, jita sangha dosha. All of the good things happen by this process of surrendering to the Lord, which is text 4. Search out the Lord, yasmin gata, from whom everything is born, tameva charyam purusham, and surrender to him. Yata praviti pasata purani. So that surrender means that you're taking your cue from Krishna and his books and his associates and his representatives of what should I do? How should I live my life in the most auspicious way for the best outcome? And it means centering it around devotional service. You don't die, there's always prasadam and there's all these other things. But you're adding this essential practice of becoming progressively more attached to Krishna and attached to his service. And it's very scientific. It means if you take your pleasure, or the whole essence of it is that you reform your life, so you take your pleasure in serving Krishna, you see, and making him happy. You see? You take your pleasure in Krishna's happiness. This is the essence of love. If you really love someone, you're happy when they're happy. So, but the wonderful thing is, we're part and parcel of Krishna. He is anandamaya vyasat. He is by nature full of bliss. And if we can hook into that bliss by participating in it, giving him happiness, and it's not difficult. He says, just chant my name, and he makes him happy. Then we can start to feel that source of endless happiness, because it's not dependent on the body. Ultimately, the body's going to drop. But if your soul, your being is connected to Krishna, then your happiness doesn't have to end simply because the body ends. Most people die in terror, what's going to happen, and who knows where they go. But if you're firmly fixed at Krishna's lotus feet, then you're on the boat back to the spiritual world, to our natural state. You see, our original state. Back home, back to Godhead. Home means we were there before, and we've come here. Big mistake. But this is the process of getting back. Knowledge, and then kirtan, and then prasadam. It's a complete program. So we have a few minutes, 1 minute, so I'll give you a little poem. This is my trademark. Okay. This is the first verse of the Sadhu Sangashtaka, Bhagavatam 3:25, 20 through 27. 3:25, 27. It teaches Kapila Dev. So he begins teaching his mother. Prasangam majaram pasham atmanakavayo vidu saheva sadhashukto moksha dwaram aparvatam. It's the same subject. Mundane affection keeps us tied to birth and death, infernal. But love for sadhus opens wide the doors to life eternal. So who's a sadhu? Then he goes on to describe, the Tikshubhakara, because his whole description. So, mother, he's teaching his mother, search out these sadhus and associate with them, surrender. And then the essential verse, which we have time to explore, critical verse. Satam prasangan mama virya samvido bhavanta ritkana rasayana katha tadjoshanara swapavarga vartmani shraddha rati bhakti anukramishiti. By sadhu sangha, see? Then Kapila Dev, the Lord, he's saying, you're going to hear about conversations about my powerful activities, mama virya samvido, which are nectar for the ears and for the heart, these subject matter. And then, Mama virya samvido bhavanti ritkana rasayanak, which is life-giving elixir for the ear and for the mind and for the heart. Tadjoshanash, by applying this process of liberation, apavarga vartmani, you're on the path of liberation now. You develop progressively these things. Shraddha, rati, and bhakti, for me, he's saying for me. Step by step. Faith will be deepened, your attraction will deepen, and your love for Krishna. And in the next verse he said, this is the easiest form of yoga. And what's the most potent kind of sadhu sangha? Is Sankirtan, hearing and chanting, which we'll now have. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol.